Okay, ready? We're going live.
We're live. We're here. We're live now. This is official. Oh, great. All right. Welcome back. Agency Hot Seat. Third installment, third of many to come. For those of you that are joining, welcome. Glad to have you. By way of quick introductions, I'm Ryan Watson, not to be confused with another Ryan here. I'm Ryan. I'm one of the partners here at Upsourced. We provide CFO advisory for creative agencies. I am joined for the first time on the agency hot seat by Meredith Pickrell. Meredith, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello. Nice to be here. I'm excited.
Meredith,
I
yeah, go ahead. I was gonna say, do you do anything at Upsource?
yeah, no,
Okay,
I
great. What's
bring
your job
fun,
here?
entertainment. I'm a senior controller here at Upsourced, and I work with creative agencies, digital agencies every day. I've been here for almost 5 years now. Prior to joining, I was in public accounting. I was an auditor, so that was a change of pace, a lot of fun.
Awesome. Okay, so for those of you that are new to the agency hot seat, what are we doing here? So we're going to be here for the next 45 minutes to an hour, and we don't have an agenda. It's not scripted. The whole point is for you to bring your questions, your challenges, your areas of concern, whatever, to us. And this is like your call-in radio show. You bring in your questions, and Meredith and I are going to riff live on what we think we would say to your problem, right? We're not the world's smartest people, but we work with over 100 marketing agencies as their outsourced CFO every month. And so it's very unlikely that you have a problem that we've not seen a half a dozen times before. And we'll tell you what we think. So with that, just as quick housekeeping, Caroline, if I'm in the audience and I would like to ask a question, what should I do about it?
Hey guys, so for some reason the chat does not work for everybody. If you are having issues with that, please feel free to email your questions to me at caroline@upsourcedaccounting.com. If the chat is working for you, great. Go ahead and drop those questions in. We'll be monitoring both of them.
Awesome. Okay, so with that, let's get started. Where should we start, Caroline?
Yeah, I'll kick us off with the first question we had. So we had an owner send us an article earlier to get your thoughts. So Ryan, if you want to set that one up and give your response, let's kick that off.
Yeah. And so Meredith, I'll start and I might monologue for just a second, but definitely feel free to jump in at whatever point you want to. So just quickly, so this was good. This is an awesome one, by the way. So this owner this is an owner that's kind of implementing project profitability, and in order to do so, is kind of reinvigorating their time tracking exercise.
They were
And they, yeah. And they shared this article that was from Adweek, where the headline of the article reads 9 arguments against timesheets and for modern compensation models. And so you kind of get the gist of the article just by me reading the headline, but it goes on to expand on those 9 arguments. I'm not going to go through all 9, but so you get a flavor for what we're talking about here. The first one is timesheets or time isn't the best way to measure value. Number 2, timesheets or time isn't the best way to manage pricing. 3, timesheets or time isn't the best way to negotiate scope creep discussions. And so, anyway, this person said, hey, look, I'm going back to my team and I'm about to sort of light a fire on our time tracking function. But like I read this Adweek article, I respect the author. How should I like reconcile these sort of two things? So, anyways, phenomenal question. And let me we can, by the way, Caroline, in the YouTube comments at some point probably link to this article just so people, if they're interested to kind of read it, they can. Here's my answer. Which is overall the point of this article, at least as I understand it, is primarily about value pricing, right? That you should not be charging for your services based on hours, but rather based on the value of the deliverables to the customer, right? This is a classic value pricing article. By the way, that is a common theme in every industry, agencies for sure, but that's true in our industry. A lot of people that are like thought leaders that are saying the same thing in accounting, and they're saying the same thing all over the place. And I think my overall attitude is I probably agree with like 80+% of what this article is saying. I believe that the idea of, quote, value pricing and tracking time are not mutually exclusive topics, right? There is no reason that you cannot charge based on value and also track time, right? So like, again, we've got some time and I'll expand again, Marietta. Sorry, I'm
No.
going to keep going. But so look, overall, this concept of value pricing is like economics 101. Like the theory of pricing in your college econ class would have told you price and cost are independent concepts, right? Price is the thing, like to set your price, you're going to go out and charge what the market will bear. You're going to charge what the customer is willing to pay based on how they value the thing you do. That's what your price should be. And the cost is not related to price at all. The cost is just what does it take in order for you to deliver that as efficiently as humanly possible. And the idea is that you look at your price and you compare it to your cost and you determine what your multiple is. And if the difference is adequate, you have a good margin, good news, you're in business, keep going. If it's not adequate, then you reevaluate your model. You look at, am I in the right market? Am I selling to the right customers? Am I truly delivering this as efficiently as possible? And I continue to iterate against that until I either A, have the right answer relative to margin, I've found a profitable approach, or there isn't an answer. Like customers just don't value this thing enough relative to what it cost me to do for this even to be a business, right? So that's how this goes. And so value pricing as a concept is simply just a fancy way of saying like, do the econ 101 thing, like just charge the way that you're supposed to charge. And by the way, like, I think that's the right approach. I will say that value pricing and value pricing is a little bit easier, like in a purely like a pure play value pricing approach, a little bit easier when you're selling like a discrete product, a homogenous service offering. You have like 3 deliverables, discrete deliverables, and you just kind of you've done it 100,000 times, you're doing the same thing every month, and you have like a fingertip pulse. Because the reality is like you still need to know, is the thing I'm selling worth selling? Can I make money selling this thing? And when I have this like homogenous set of like discrete deliverables, I know, roughly speaking, what it takes for me to deliver that. So I can just focus on pushing on the value pricing equation and I can play around over there. The reality is most agencies do not operate that way. They don't sell like a very discrete, homogenous set of services. Yes, there is some degree of repeatability to what we do, but more often they look a little more heterogeneous. They're a little more bespoke. They're a little more custom. And so what we see is pricing that's like influenced by, informed by the concept of value, right? What was this? What does my customer value my deliverable at, and how can I push that? But there's always also the concept of, am I going to make money on this thing? Like, is this specific iteration of my deliverable going to generate margin? And the only way for me to answer that question is through the concept of time. What is it going to cost me to deliver this thing? And is it worth for me to deliver it? And so, again, for that reason, the average agency is still absolutely needs to consider the concept of time because it is the cost. Is this worth delivering? And they need to do the feedback loop thing, which is to say, I delivered this service and did it make money for me? Right. And so that is still an important concept. I will say again, like we anecdotally speaking, I've said this before, I like to make sweeping statements, and there just aren't very many serious agencies that do not track time, like full stop, and plenty of like smaller agencies that, have chosen not to for whatever reason. But when you're north of 4 or 5 million in revenue, I just have very rarely seen an agency that doesn't track time. There's one example I can think of a client we work with. They're north of 8, I think even north of 10 million in revenue, killer net margins. They don't track time. This business has a high percentage of retainers, and these are homogenous service offerings. And so again, they don't need to track time because they know all of these deliverables look the same. And so if I have a profit problem, it's because this one doesn't look different. And it's very easy for me to compare this project to this project because they're all the same. But in a traditional agency, it doesn't work that way, right? It doesn't work that way. And the reality is, like, when I have a profit problem, I have to ask the question, why do I have a gross margin, a profit problem? And often it's, I mean, either a utilization problem or a project profit problem. But if it's a project profit problem, it's rarely a uniform problem. It's rarely like, oh, my pricing just in as a whole is bad, or like my sales process scoping is bad. It's usually idiosyncratic. Some of my projects are going very well. A few of them are going very poorly. I need to know what is exactly happening at those projects. And there's just simply no way to diagnose that and solve it without running and evaluating project level profitability and using time. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox, but my overall point is if you see articles that decry the use of timesheets, it's not that they're totally wrong. It's just that they're mixing two concepts into one concept. And one of the concepts, you should be pricing based on value and not cost. Smart. Perfect. But the other concept, which is, well, we should just ignore time altogether. Not smart, not necessary. Because the other thing I'll also tell you is that like gross margin is not a destination. Like, oh, I figured out how to get profitable and I'm there. Because we sell a bunch of sort of semi-customized bespoke projects, my project margin is going to vary project to project forever. And so gross margin is a continual optimization. It's not a one-time I diagnose it, I solve it, and hooray, I'm just profitable forever. It's not how it works. And so anyway, got to have time to figure these things out. So they're important for that purpose. So again, sorry, stepping off, but it was a wonderful question. It's a really interesting article, and I will definitely link to it. But I think it's maybe goes just a hair too far. Meredith, I can't imagine there's
I
like
mean,
a
you
bunch of
just
words you want to add to that. I mean, I used all of the words, so
no, I don't want to. We can like open up the questions to the audience, but I think one thing that's been coming up a lot recently is like understanding the mix of like the types of projects that we're doing. Like, are we taking, I call them like passion projects, or are we selling it for a lower scope because it like looks really good for our website? Or it's like a certain client that we want to be doing work for. And so we're using that as more of like a marketing tool. And like the only way that we're knowing if we have that right mix of those types of clients is also looking at that project profitability. So I'm seeing that that's coming up a
totally.
lot for the last few weeks.
And now we're kind of going into it. I'll take this like the one step further, and then we can stop on this trail and go to a different one. But you hear a lot of times that like, oh yeah, passion projects are so classic sequence of events. We look at our gross margin, it isn't what we want it to be, and one of the first reasons is, well, yeah, oh, I have a couple of these projects and they went awry. Or we didn't make much money on them because they were passion projects. We knew they were going to make a bunch of money, and so that's like driving my thing down. And there's nothing wrong with that. But again, the right way to do this is to say, hey, I want, like, for instance, I want to earn making this up, 45% gross margin. And I believe my team can be utilized my service team can be utilized 75% of the time. And so based on the math, and by the way, I don't actually know if this is the math, but based on the math, if I had a 45% gross margin and a 75% utilization, that means my project margin would need to be, let's say it's 58%. I don't know. You could probably tell me what it actually is, Meredith, but it has to be 58%. So I now know what's that?
It's 58%.
Oh my gosh. Can you look at this?
that
I do
math.
this every day. I do this every day. So anyway,
Very
yeah.
good
So
calculator.
it's got to be 58%. And so I'm pricing assuming it's 58%. Now, when I take a passion project, I got to just be honest. I know it's not going to be 58. I did that on purpose. So let's ask, what is it going to be? And then let's set a new reasonable expectation. Hey, you know what? Most of my projects are at 58, just like I thought. These ones are not. And so 45 isn't going to happen. My new bar for success this quarter, this month, this year, whatever, is 43%. That's now the best I can do because I handicapped myself and I did it on purpose and I think it was right. But just every decision you got to go in, like just because it's not ideal doesn't mean we shouldn't quantify it and set new expectations. And that will allow us to know if our other things are doing okay. And did we end up where we wanted to end up? Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Caroline, what else we got?
Awesome response. Okay, so this one came in from our email. So our company has worked ourselves into a highly leveraged debt situation. So once we've stabilized our cash flow, what are some things we should keep in mind when developing our strategy to attack the mountain of debt?
Meredith, what do you think? What are your like initial gut about that question?
That's a hard one. There's not like a perfect
It's really hard and it's really common too. Like how many people, how many businesses can you think of off the top of your
several
head that's like, we're working through this right now?
several.
Yeah.
Um, the first step is like a lot of times we don't even have full visibility into how, there's visibility into what the mountain of debt is, but there's not visibility into like, okay, what's most important? Where's our money going? Like, so first like step is wrapping your head around like weekly cash flow, and let's get into building a solvency state, like steady
Yep.
state. And then from there, it's a little more tricky.
Well, I mean, I think there's no silver bullet. I think what you're saying is like there's no really silver bullets on the other side of that. Again, like the most important thing when you have identified I have a mountain of debt problem is let's not add to that mountain anymore. Like we can't do that, right? Like we have I can think of several where it's like, okay, we have this huge hole to dig out of. And by the way, like there's a very real human personal finance kind of discussion around like, do I have the energy to dig out of this hole? Do I have personal guarantees on this hole? Like, does it actually make sense to continue running this business? And what are the alternatives to doing that? I think that's a really important conversation to have.
I also think
Assuming,
like
yeah,
when you're looking at that big mountain of debt, it's and to make the conscious decision not to keep like look at ourselves in the eyes and say, are we financing current month losses with additional debt?
yeah,
And if
exactly.
the answer is yes, stop.
Stop. Can't do that. I mean,
Talking
look,
about
you're running yourself into. I can't tell you times I'm like, I'm worried about you as a human being. Like there's no good. I've seen this movie play out, and none of them have happy endings. Like you're going to declare bankruptcy, and I don't want that for you. So again, you often think like, well, I don't want to let this person go, or we're on the other side of this, but you got to step back and have a sobering moment, which is, yeah, but if we aren't, I mean, let's just apply a probability to our success and just be objective. Let's say it's like, I got a 30% chance. Well, that means I have a 70% chance of this not working out, and I'm going to declare bankruptcy. I might have to sell my home. I mean, these are real life consequences. And so the last thing you can do is continue to throw trash on the top of your mountain. And then so the very first thing you have to do is like, well, now I need to generate cash flow. Full stop. And by the way, we got to make sure that we think that's possible, because I mean, it is sometimes true that this is the only way to generate excess cash flow is to generate more sales. And if that is your answer, again, be very careful about assuming that that's just a lever you can pull. We all know if that's the only answer, that's very hard to do. Like you don't just, wave a wand. It's like, oh, new revenue comes in the door. But anyway, so then the next thing is like, you have to get yourself to consistent amount of cash flow, even if it's not a ton, consistent, positive cash flow. And then from there, you got a couple options. One, my guess is that mountain of debt is an amalgamation of a bunch of different debt instruments. 18 credit cards, a couple of AR lines of credit, EIDL, whatever. There are, and I'm not going to profess to be an expert in this, but I've got a couple clients going through this now. There are debt consolidation institutions for this exact reason. The thing that you need to do as best as you humanly can is like get a plan for some of this, and ideally extend the duration of the debt and lower the interest rate as best you can. And again, that's what these debt consolidation organizations do. And so that is, one avenue that I would anticipate is like, how can we restructure the debt in a way that is more manageable? You're just trying to improve your situation. You're not going to solve it. And then look, at that point, you're just putting your head down. I mean, you just have to realize, okay, let's just say it's $400,000 and I'm going to generate $10,000 of cash flow a month. Well, you do the math, that's 40 months. And that's just shy of 4 years. And that's fine. Like these businesses are meant to last a long time. So you look that in the eye and you sort of take a big swallow and then you push it away and you just put your head down. And then at that point, your goal is to just create some positive momentum, continue to put one foot in front of the other, and don't look at the huge mountain, ignore the mountain, and just take some comfort and validation in the gradual chipping away. Like eat the elephant one bite at a time. There are no other shortcuts.
No, I think the biggest piece where I see this not working is when we continue to have losses along the way. And
Yeah, I mean, you just can't do it.
you just
You
can't.
you have to stop at the very, because again, even if you are personally guaranteeing this, you cannot throw good money after bad. Like the goal isn't like that's like it's like you're at the roulette table and you're down $8,000. Don't spin the wheel again, right? Do not spin the wheel again. Stop spinning the wheel. And now let's figure out how to handle that $8,000 problem we just created.
Let's talk about you're in this situation and you're selling hard, but you're selling at the wrong price. Do you bring money in the door just to bring money into the door, even though you're getting a really low margin on it? Or do you not take on that work and get the larger projects or the stronger margin projects? Make sense?
It totally makes sense. It's an interesting question. There's not a lot of it's not a clear-cut answer. I mean, here's the one clear-cut answer would be look, if you have the ability to generate a positive contribution margin, meaning like on an absolute basis, so the percent is worse. Like, so again, let's just say, for instance, we're targeting a 50% margin. I'm not getting enough of the 50% margin work. I have the opportunity to get a 35% margin with my people. Do I take that or do I not? And as long as, this is so funny, I remember this as like a case study in accounting class. This was based on steel, by the way. And it was a contribution margin. Anyways, as long as taking the 35% margin does not inhibit your ability to continue to take the 50% margin, and you don't get caught in this trap where I have people, oh, now I can sell 50%, but they're stuck doing 35%. Those are big ifs. As long as you can do that, the math is the positive contribution margin wins. That is money that you can make to pay down your debt. You should do it. You're better off doing it. You're better off doing it than laying the people off, because even though your percentage goes up, your dollars go down. And we're working on dollars at this point. But again, you have to be very careful that you do not cannibalize the business that you are here to create. And that is a real risk. So you have to be, and some can, and some, quite frankly, cannot. I mean, I cannot give you rules for what would and what wouldn't cannibalize it. You just got to be very thoughtful. You cannot cannibalize it. And you need an exit strategy. Like, you need a way to get the hell out of this 35% hamster wheel. Like, maybe it's, we do a cycle and we let a month go by so that we can try to fill that group up after those projects with the 50%. I mean, there's a couple of strategies, but you got to get off the hamster wheel at some point, and you got to have an exit strategy before you get into it. But if you can think through those two things, I don't know, I would do it. What do you think, Meredith?
No, I agree with that. That's something that comes up a lot, especially as we get closer to like burning through. When you're in the liquidity, in the hierarchy of financial needs, and you don't have liquidity, it's selling anything that we can get cash in the door is often what
Totally.
we're seeing. Along these lines, I guess, Caroline, are there other questions? Because I could keep
going. Caroline, I assume we have other questions, but
so
yeah.
along those lines, I guess, to like back up, like, how do we not get into that situation in the first place, other than just the don't finance losses, prolonged losses with debt? The other thing I see is when we have clients come in and they've got big pass-through income and expenses, that's often where we start to see tricky cash flow situations.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, I can think of at least a couple clients right now where the cash, like, that financed current operations with prepayments on pass through. Like, here's $100,000 of media spend, take it, spend it through the rest of the year, and what they did was use it for other purposes in the meantime, kind of hoping to pay it back.
That's really hard.
That's super dangerous. Don't do that. I mean, the bottom line is don't do that.
Don't do
like
that.
I
Put it
have
in a separate bank account if you
exactly,
have
and
the
you know, this is really
complexity of
silly.
accounting. I don't love multiple bank accounts, but if you don't have complex accounting and know how to do it, move it to a separate bank account and
I don't,
figure it out.
yeah, I mean, I have seen agencies that have a different bank account for every client. Like every
Yeah.
client who's doing now, granted,
I don't
I
like that,
definitely think that's overkill. I
but
definitely think that's overkill.
but I'd rather have that than the alternative.
I 1000% agree. Cause well, it's just lawsuit waiting to happen.
So I'm
But
gonna cut you
yeah,
two off on
yeah,
this
go ahead.
topic because we have another question waiting.
Yes,
So
Okay.
great,
this
great,
one
great. Please do.
is
Yeah.
switching gears over to utilization.
Oh
So
boy.
it feels like not all of my team members are always staying super active at work. How do I know if they're actually working the whole time? If I need to hire somebody, if I need to fire somebody, the big topic we love.
Are they time tracking currently?
Well, we don't know,
No.
but
Okay.
I have to believe the answer to that question is no, right? I mean,
So yeah, well, first we needed to do time tracking, and then as we roll out time tracking, what really helps is if you deputize somebody on the team to be in charge of the compliance of that time tracking. So in a larger organization, you would have multiple people that like weekly they're going in, they're reviewing. So take the department heads. Let's say you have 3 department heads. Each of those department heads have teams of people that work under them. Those department head needs to go in, review their timesheet each week and say, hey, like you didn't, I only see 10 hours in here. I know you worked more. Can you get the rest of your time in? And then overall, like from tone at the top needs to be our owner's track time down to like the intern's tracking time. So if you're
yep,
showing it as a leadership team that you time track, and by the way, like different project management systems, we use Teamwork. It integrates into our Harvest. You go in and you click your task for the day, you start the timer, it integrates right into Harvest. It's an on-off button. So daily time tracking is a big one, and having a deputy that's reviewing the timesheets at a minimum weekly to verify accuracy.
uh, yep, totally agree. I mean, time. I mean, and this kind of goes back to the topic at the top, but there's all I get it. Like again, I'm making assumptions here that there isn't time tracking because again, the question was like, you know, are these people? I'm worried that they're not doing enough or there's not enough work. How can I tell? And how can I tell if I need to hire? Again, like time tracking is the way that we answer that question.
Yep.
And if you're not doing it, again, make sure that you're positioning it to employees not as a sort of big brother. I'm trying to make sure you're doing stuff, but more of like a, hey, this is how we help you, right? This is how I know if you're too busy so that I can get you help. And if you are ready to take on more projects, so I can get you those too, right? We're obviously all here to grow the business and have a successful agency. And so I'm flying blind if I don't have those things. And then look, to be honest, then the question of hiring is incredibly easy and mathematic, which is exactly like I have a target utilization, which is enough that I can earn a profit but also not so much that I don't have flexibility for people to take time off and for them to think about, you know, to do internal stuff and to take on new work when it comes. I can't be like so full that every new project is like, oh no, I got to hire somebody first, right? So, you know, there's like kind of a helpful sort of middle ground. And then you just kind of like you create a collar where when utilization exceeds this amount, got to hire. When
Yep.
utilization falls below this amount, I got to do the opposite of hire.
Yeah.
And then easy peasy.
One of my favorite, and sorry if you're a client, you've probably heard this, but one of my favorite anecdotes is one of my clients early on, the one guy was just working like 200-hour months, which is a lot, like that's more than
A
a
lot of
40
hours.
work week.
Too
It's
many.
just a lot of hours. And for months in a row, I'm what is going on? And so we finally got to the bottom of it. He was rendering files to a cloud and it was just taking hours. And so we bought like a $5,000 computer, or the client bought like a $5,000 computer for him, and he was able to work. So it's not
Yeah,
always like, it's not big
totally.
watching. It's like, maybe there's a software we can throw at this problem, and so
It-
you're going to see that in the project margins too. It's like, why is this phase taking so long? Oh, we need to throw a
totally.
software expense at this, problem solved.
Yeah. So
I know that's
it is
pretty.
for it. It is, and I don't even mean that as like a story to tell. Like that is the reason to do it. Like it is
Yeah,
truly for everybody's benefit. It is not all of this stuff is for everybody's benefit. Like we all want to make more money and have a job here, right? Well, we can't do that if we're not like profitable, and we can't know how to become more profitable if we don't have this data. So it's the only way to do it. It's the only way to do it.
This next question actually segues pretty well with a couple of the questions that we've had. So they're asking what's the most commonplace agency owners are overspending. So they said, like, referencing back to the debt conversation, it feels like there's places we could cut costs to get out of debt. And then I feel like that kind of connects with the software that you guys are talking about too. Do you guys see agency owners spending money on softwares that they don't necessarily need? What's your thoughts there?
So I can take this one. I think it's hard. Like the biggest cost in an agency are your people cost. Like that is it. There now sometimes there's OpEx overhead that it's like, okay, let's go through, like scan the credit card statement. Let's see if we have like extra seats on Adobe that need to be cut and cut them. Like you're not going to move the needle that much though. Like it's going to be a few $100 here or there. And yeah, like let's not spend that. So like let's do that quarterly, scan your Amex and make sure we're not double paying for something. But ultimately, when there's a liquidity problem, it's typically related to a gross margin problem, and your gross margin is just your people cost.
Just people. I totally agree.
Not
Yeah, I
fun.
mean,
It's not a fun conversation, but
there's yeah, there's just not a lot of I mean, again, like Meredith said, we should look anyway. There's not a lot of low-hanging fruit though. If there is low-hanging
travel,
fruit,
sometimes
it's pro
travel. We get
yeah,
high
travel can be it. Travel can be
rent.
it.
Rent is usually high, but you can't do anything about
Yeah,
it.
what are you gonna do about it? There, occasionally I can think of like anecdotally a few folks who are we're I say we, I guess I'm throwing my lot in with the agencies. We're creative people. And so we like to overspend on things that are creative, even if they're internal. So we might do a podcast for our marketing department, and we might spend $8,000 a month to produce that. Don't do that. That's probably not a high ROI proposition. And if you're looking to cut money, again, I'm not saying if you're a 20+% net margin business, by all means. But
Yeah.
if you're losing money, that's a clear area. And I also think I've said
Or
this in
reallocate that marketing spend to a place that has a
something that's,
faster
yeah,
ROI on it.
more direct response, which again is probably going to look more like sales than it is like marketing. But and then the I've said this on this hot seat before, but when things are going poorly, and this is particularly true, I see this more often with like solo founders, which is just maybe it's probably a separate topic. The TLDR is being a solo founder is very hard. But for solo founders, when things are going poorly, look, by running a business is the loneliest place in the world, right? Like your team can't empathize with you, your spouses can't empathize with you, your friends can't empathize with you. And if it's not going well, not only is it lonely, but it is like crushingly tough. And I can speak from firsthand experience. I can tell you that. And again, doubly hard for solo founders. They don't have anybody to turn to like partners. And so the intuition when things are going poorly and I'm feeling lonely is to hire consultants. Like, well, I must have this problem. Everybody's got this silver. There's a playbook out there that I just don't know the answer to. And quite frankly, more often than not, it's not true. It's not true. It's just going to cost you more money than it's going to generate. And that I would hesitate. I think you're generally speaking, you probably know the answer, and it's probably revenue. It's like unfortunately, I need more revenue, and I realize there's no waving a magic wand. You can't just like will yourself to generate. But those activities are the activities that you need to be spending, and nobody can shortcut that for you. Even a sales and marketing consultant, like they're not going to get out there and carry a bag for you. And even if they did, they would not be as effective as you, even if you're not a great seller. So anyway, the
They're
intuition to hire a bunch of consultants to try to like advise you out of this is going to dig the hole deeper.
agreed.
Awesome.
Caroline.
Yes, so we do have one more in email and then we'll wrap up unless you guys email questions or drop in the chat. Again,
Cool.
apologize if the chat is not working for some of you. If the chat function is not working, please email your questions to caroline@upsourcedaccounting.com and we'll be sure to get them answered. If we don't get to it this time, we'll be sure to make it next month. So our last question today is, what are the top financial risks my agency should have on my radar going into Q3 and Q4?
I would ask like
Yeah, go ahead.
what I would want to know like what their pipeline is looking like. I would want to know what their current margins are looking like. I would need to dive into like understand where's the business at right now. To
Totally. Yeah, look, I think you're going the right direction. I mean, these are simple businesses, by the way. We love to overcomplicate them, but they're very simple businesses. And so your number one financial risk is always revenue. Like it
Yep.
just is. Everything else is like, again, this is a game of 80% of running a business of any kind is generating demand. That's it. And if you don't like sales, then you shouldn't do it. That's the job. So 80% of the business is generating demand. It's the hardest thing to do. It's the thing that matters the most. And the other 20% is finding a way to match supply, i.e., people delivery, to the demand. And to do it in a way that delivers great work, which reinforces demand and generates margin for you. And by the way, I hate to like oversimplify, but that the delivery is the easy part. It's not easy, but it's the easier part. Generating demand is the hard part. Your biggest risk is that your existing customers don't continue to buy from you, or that the market for your new customers dries up, and you have shocks to your demand, and therefore you have too much supply, too many people to do too little work, and you lose money. And it's always demand driven. Like this supply is a lever I can pull with ease. It may not be fun, but I can go higher and I can let people go. I can do that. Again, I'm not saying that it's fun, but I can do that. Demand isn't like a lever I can just pull. I mean, certainly for agencies that have more repeatable revenue, there's some degree of a lever, but for the most part, like there are assumptions, there's risks. Things need to go right for me. And so that's your biggest risk. And obviously the primary way that you mitigate that risk is with excess cash. It's to have cash reserves so that if demand starts to wane, I've got room to run for me to figure out to kind of right size my supply so that I can start making money again. I wouldn't worry about a single other financial risk. Everything
Yeah.
else you can, yeah. Anyway, that's my answer. Is that it? Is that the whole, is these all the questions? Okay, wonderful. Well, for all of you that joined, we thank you. Thank you for your thoughtful questions. A couple of those maybe I was very happy that Meredith answered first because it took me a second to put a thought together. They're good. They're thoughtful. It's awesome. We have a lot of fun with this. So
There's topics you all want to hear, like specific hot seat topics in the future, like a sales topic seminar. Like, let us know what you all.
and drop it in the comments and we'll hit it on the next one. So we do
Yeah.
this once a month on whatever it is. Was it the third Thursday?
Third Thursday. The next one is May 16th. So we
May
will see you all
16th.
then.
Third Thursday. Drop it in the comments and we'll hit it next time. And if you don't happen to join, we'll send you a link to it. You'll get your answer either way. But this was fun. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.